is so interesting.
All right, y'all, here we go. What's going on, y'all? It's your homegirl, Tanisha Peoples, live and in color as always, repping from the Shy. I got my homeboys, Jason B. Allen, repping ATL, my other homeboy, Nehemiah Frank, repping Tulsa. And we are Talk That Real Shit. Now, just to give y'all a heads up, we are new to the Citizen Air platform. We done moved on up from my Facebook page to over here. And if you're unfamiliar with our conversations, just let me let you know through the door. We are unapologetic and authentic in our thoughts, our solutions, and everything else about our Black lives and the world, our living as Black people in this world. So if that is a problem for you, if you can't accept the truth, this might not be the place for you. But if you've been looking for that real and raw talk, welcome home. All right, y'all. So today, we got a very special guest, somebody who I feel needs no introduction. He actually makes me feel like I'm talking to Beyonce. Like that's how big this guest is. But today our special guest is Dr. Howard Fuller. Now, if you're unfamiliar with this icon, Dr. Howard Fuller is a civil rights advocate and education activist. He started a school which was the Malcolm X Liberation University. And he also has a school named after him in Milwaukee, Wisconsin called Dr. Howard Fuller Collegiate Academy. So we're going to bring Dr. Fuller on, and today we're going to have a conversation about passing that baton and activism. Awesome. Dr. Fuller, where you at? Come on through.
Hey, how you doing? It's really good to be on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate having you. Like I said, you are an icon, and you know this is like legit sitting here talking to Beyonce or Jay-Z or Barack, you know, of the education space. So I'm telling you, people don't know about you; they go learn about you today. So first, let me ask, you know, how y'all weekends went, because it's Monday. You know, we coming into the work week. I just want to check in on y'all, see how everything went.
Well, it was a good weekend. You know, we're still searching for the murderers of Sequoia Turner. Dear sweet child here, also student at KIP. And just, you know, still doing the work for advocacy and, you know, just taking a break from the everyday politics and enjoying family. So it was good. Well timed, man.
Cool.
Yeah, so just did a little road trip to Atlanta. So we're back in Atlanta right now with our dogs. But yeah, I think my weekend, besides, you know, traveling that long drive, is thinking about DeVos's statements. So I know we're going to probably get into that a little bit later today. But yeah, I'm kind of disturbed about some of the things that she said. So I'm sure we'll probably talk about that soon.
Neo, you ain't scared out here like traveling as a Black person? You know that's dangerous these days. Traveling while Black.
Traveling while Black, hey, it happens.
Yeah, it is happening.
You know, the crazy thing is like, you know, the murder of the unarmed gentleman in at the Wendy's, and he was Black in Chocolate City, Atlanta, ATL, right? 52% Black population. The little Black girl that died, like, you know, there's a lot of intricacies there to pull apart and talk about.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Dr. Fuller, go ahead. I was just curious about that because it's scary, you know, out here being Black. But go ahead about your weekend. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, most of my weekend was spent doing some work with the Freedom Coalition for Charter Schools.
Oh, wow.
But the one thing, you know, Tanisha, that I said when people ask me about that is I have food, clothing, shelter, and some money. And so far, health. Mm-hmm. What concerns me is the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of our brothers and sisters who have too little of any of that.
Right.
They're not healthy. They don't have food. They don't have shelter. They don't have clothing. So all of us who do, we need to consider ourselves blessed and be concerned about our brothers and sisters who don't.
Absolutely. That's a fact. That's a fact. That's a whole fact. I mean, and we gonna get into that in this conversation, you know, but just to answer the question real quick, my weekend was cool. I pissed a couple of white people off, not on purpose, but you know, it happened. So, you know, I mean, that works well. So y'all, let's get into it because we got a lot to discuss today. And kicking it off with the conversation that I talked about earlier and introducing Dr. Fuller. So we are in a very special time, a time that could easily be the new civil rights and social rights movement, right? And so a couple of months ago, Dr. Fuller, you and I were in LA at one of the Freedom Coalition of Charter Schools protesting against the Democratic candidates, and we were having a conversation. And you were saying basically like, you know, I'm tired. You know, I've been doing this for a long time. You know, I'm older. Like, you know, it's
definitely older.
like you were saying, like it's time for y'all young people to take on over. You know, so tell us about how and why you got into activism, and how us young people can take the reins. And in taking the reins, what are you seeing that we're doing right? What are we doing wrong? What are we not doing? What advice do you have for us as an activist that's been in the game, that knows what it takes to push for this change?
Yeah, so what got me into activism is this fundamental belief in our history. And so way back in the day, there was a book called Black Rage. And in that book, James Baldwin was quoted as saying that any Black person who's in a relative state of consciousness has to be in a constant state of rage. And that's me
Right.
for all of my adult life.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have that rage, you can do a couple things. You can turn it internally, you know, either internally into yourself or internally onto our community. Or what you can do is say, I'm gonna fight. And I'm gonna fight to see if I can change the lives of our people in any kind of way. And one of the lessons I learned from Derek Bell in Faces at the Bottom of the Well is that he said, look, racism is not some tangential thing in America. It's woven into the fabric of American society. And that the reality of it is that if we're going to make change, you can't just change the police or just change education. You got to change America, because these systems are linked to the very nature of the racist character of the country.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
So, you know, when we say we're getting ready to fight and we're going to make systemic change, we need to really understand what that means. And the one thing that Derek Bell said in Faces at the Bottom of the Well is that you have to fight even if victory is not possible, because not to fight is to co-sign on the injustice. So when you ask me what advice do I give to you all, the advice I have is do what you think is necessary. I mean, I don't, you know, I'm not trying to, oh, y'all not doing this right or wrong, because I'm not in your shoes. And you know, it ain't for me to tell you all what you're doing right or wrong. What it's for me to do is that if you got any questions that I can answer, I'm here to answer. I'm not here to be trying to be in your place, you know, because you're in your place. And
Right.
Frantz Fanon wrote a book called Wretched of the Earth. And he said in this book, every generation out of relative obscurity must discover its mission and either fulfill it or betray it. And so you all are at the point where you got to discover your mission and you either got to fulfill it or betray it. And those of us who come before you, our responsibility, at least I feel my responsibility at this moment in time, is to support you. And the way to support you is, number one, get out of the way. And then the second way to support you is to be there if you need my help. That's sort of what I see as my role.
Yeah. So let me just give y'all a heads up real quick. Dr. Fuller is gonna drop a gang of books during this conversation. She's gonna drop a gang of titles. So I've cashed Amazon out buying all the books that Dr. Fuller dropped during this conversation. So just a heads up, if y'all got a pen and a pad, write the books down, because it's definitely good information in those books. But Neo and Jason, I want to give y'all a chance to respond to what Dr. Fuller said, as you know, us being young activists trying to make change. Like, what's y'all mission? How are y'all pushing that mission forward? How can our activists, elder activists like Dr. Fuller, support us?
Well, I think one of the most profound things that Dr. Fuller just said was we have to do what is necessary. And sometimes, you know, that means shutting down the freeway in order to get the FOP to realize, hey, these Black people, they have power, or these people, period, no matter what race they are, they have power and they have demands, and they're going to continue to disrupt unless those demands are met. And I've been seeing a lot of Black teachers for teachers for Black student marches across the country. I know that there was one here, but then I saw another one. And I can't remember where it was in the country, but you know, they're doing what they think is absolutely is necessary. And I think it's great that, you know, these things are happening, that we're seeing another wave of, I guess we could say, the civil rights era of our time unfolding right before our eyes. I think it's great.
Mm-hmm.
Just to add to that, I definitely would say it's a teacher in me. I was writing down the books as we were receiving the titles. And I think that it starts with, you know, being in the know, being educated, not, you know, taking it upon yourself to act on emotion. And I see a lot of that on the banter that happens on social media. You know, people have great ideas. You know, just this morning, Chance the Rapper tweeted about how, you know, the Black community is in error for wanting to support Joe Biden, and that we should be supporting Yeezy after Kanye West just made another outlandish, you know, comment via Twitter. And I was just kind of like, brother, how would you stand with us a couple of years ago wanting to support, you know, Chicago public schools and other public schools across the country and say, you know, we need better educational outcomes for Black children, and then you use your platform to state an opinion that you formed into fact. And I think a lot of people are doing that too often without reading, without being in touch, and without being engaged. And so I would definitely say, for those of us who know better, we have to do better, and we have to do our due diligence in reading, researching. You know, I like to say our elders, but some people like to say our seasoned saints or our seasoned seniors. And I think that we should definitely rely on them, because that's how we bridge the gap, especially from people's previous experiences, regardless of age or race. So education is the key. You know, I was going to push that.
Now let me this is a two-part question, because I saw Dr. Fuller when Jason mentioned Kanye running for president, you shook your head, you know. And so when we think about stuff like that, like you got Kanye talking about he running for president, then you got Chance, you know, co-signing that, and then the young people like, oh, we fuck with Kanye and Chance, so we go that route. And then the lack of education that's missing behind voting and overall like carrying movements. What's your thoughts on that? Because it's like, yeah, we should stand in our mission, and everybody hates Trump and ain't nobody really feeling Joe Biden. So naturally, you know, the younger people like, hey, I'm going with Kanye and whoever co-signing Kanye. So that education piece seems to be missing. So what do you think about that? I mean, what do you think about Kanye, period? What do you think about that piece?
The last time I saw Kanye, his ass was sitting in the White House with Trump.
Right.
So here's what I want to say, man. Anybody that go out there and waste their vote on Kanye West, when you got fascist Donald Trump in the White House, when you got a man in the White House who don't give a damn about our lives. I don't like Joe Biden either, but I cannot envision a strategy that re-elects Donald Trump. This man is killing us. This man is pursuing policies that is leading to the death of our people. And ain't no Kanye West running for president gonna change that. And
That's
so
right.
anybody who is wasting their vote on Kanye West is a fool. We need to understand right now that no matter who gets elected president, we're gonna have to fight.
That's
The
right.
question is, who do you want to fight? Do you want to fight Trump? Or do you want to fight Joe Biden? Or Kanye West? So my position on this is, it ain't about I like Biden. It is I hate Trump. It is that Trump is doing actual damage to the lives of Black people every single day, man. And so I mean, everybody's got a right to their opinion and this and that. But if we don't understand the clear threat that this man is to our very lives, then all of us who run around here talking about we woke, we might as well take our ass back to sleep if you don't understand what is actually happening at this moment in this country.
Dr. Fuller said, take y'all ass back to sleep if y'all don't know what's really going on. And that's a word. I don't know about y'all, but I felt that in my spirit. Because
That was good.
it's like we have a lot of people claiming to be woke, you know, and it's like this romanticized idea of being woke and being revolutionaries and stuff without having the actual facts and data and, you know, just the knowledge behind what it takes to actually move things and remove things that are harming our communities is dangerous. You know, and so to that point, how do we educate these so-called woke people who really sleepwalking? How do we do that? Especially again, our young people who have to carry this movement in the future because, you know, they saw that Martin had a dream. They saw Rosa, you know, say that she wanted to go sit in the back of the bus, but they didn't know the strategy behind that. And honestly, from my perspective, I think that strategy, that strategic piece in carrying the movements is missing nowadays because everybody want to march, but don't nobody want to plan. So how do we get this information to our young people so they can make informed decisions and also be strategic in their organizing so that we can be effective in driving these movements?
So I think that, you know, it starts, you know, I start my conversations off with this. I believe that it starts with educating the mind. And that doesn't have to be in the classroom. Like, how are we reaching our own family members who are progressive? You know, I did a little study over the weekend too, you know, and I really looked at, you know, what are people posting? You know, a lot of my family members that are connected to the church and my loved ones, you know, I looked at, you know, have they posted anything about, you know, voter empowerment? Have they posted anything about, you know, Black business ownership? Have they posted anything about the injustices that are happening across our nation? And I was very shocked by some. You know, I know that I take it upon myself to not just like things on social media, but to really do my research and read. And it is very shocking to know that there are so many people that have multiple degrees who do not do that. So we have to, you know, reach our own base. I know a lot of people put a lot of stake into Black celebrities. And I mentioned this on our last show, what Malcolm and even what James Baldwin spoke about Black celebrities. Like, we have pushed them so high on a pedestal because that is what the systems in America have made us believe that we should do. But we also have to realize that the systems in America hired them to entertain, and that people are distracted by things that entertain them. And so we have to not just solely rely on, you know, the entertainers to push the message. We have to be pushing the message on every chance that we get, pushing the message about voting, pushing the message about home ownership and supporting our own Black businesses and having culturally inclusive curriculums in our schools, whether they're independent, public, or faith-based schools. Like, we need that. And so I think that's a start in helping to break some of the chains that we see shackling the minds of our people.
Yeah. Neo, Dr. Fuller, what y'all got?
Man, I'm just like, I'm thinking about Black Wall Street, honestly, because at this point in time, we're so integrated into the system, right? Of white supremacy. Like, I mean, our kids come out and they're dealing with this, with this pollutants in their brains when they're going to schools, right? These public schools, or even schools where, you know, there are Black teachers that aren't culturally aware of their history or really connected to it in a spiritual sense or a holistic sense. And they're not studied, so they can't even pass that on to the kids so they can grow up and think critically and be able to question certain things, right? And so every time we get into this type of conversation, I always think, man, you know, it just takes me back to integration. Like, was this really the way that we went about it, right? The way that we went about integration. Did we do this the right way? And I've always, I mean, probably for the last 5 years, I say no, we really did not. This was the biggest social science project that went to shits. It's horrible. I hate to, and you know, it's easy to talk to Black people about this, but whenever a white person's around, they're like, oh, you don't want to be with us? And I'm like, of course we want to be pals. But at the same time, like I'm trying to talk about some serious, like we got the short end of the stick, and it's kind of hard to explain that to them. So
Yeah.
that's where my mind is. The last thing I do want to say, because I want to let the doctor speak, so we can just all be quiet and soak in what he's got to say, is that Zora, what's Neale Hurston?
Yeah.
I just recently read that over the weekend that she actually wasn't for integration, and I was like, dang, where was her mind at this? Like, we already know that she was a very studied person, right? She's a journalist, activist. I would say she was probably one of the first journalistic activists, like, kind of like what we do. And so for her to be thinking that back then, there were definitely other people that were thinking the same thing that she was.
Yeah, a couple of things real quick. First of all, Zora Neale Hurston was phenomenal, but you got to know that there were a whole lot of like journalists, activists prior to her. I mean, but that's just. But let me say something about this integration thing. You know how people love to quote Martin Luther King? Oh, Martin Luther King.
Oh, yes.
King. Okay. So there's a book called The Lost Education of Horace Tate by Vanessa Siddle Walker. And in 1967, Martin Luther King Jr. was invited to give the keynote speech to the annual meeting of the Georgia Teacher Education Association, which was the Black Association of Educators. Here's what Martin Luther King said. He said that a lot of white people and a lot of my Negro, because you talked about Negro brothers and sisters, look at integration from a numbers perspective. I look at it from the issue of shared power. He said that I am not for any integration that leads to Negro annihilation. And I am not going to support something that integrates me out of power. So if you're going to seriously talk about integration, not desegregation, integration, then the question is, where's the shared power? Where do we have power in this arrangement?
That's right.
And we got so many of us who think that if I can just get with some white people, that through osmosis, my life gonna be better. And we don't understand the reality of what it means to sit down with somebody and you ain't got no power. It's like when people talk to me about the importance of us having, all of us together. I'm saying, cool. Do you have any power when you sit your butt down in the seat? Because if we sitting there and the only thing that we are is a way for them to say we had some of y'all in the meeting.
That's right.
Or if we're in the meeting and we just so happy to be there that we ain't gonna say nothing, we ain't gonna do nothing because we're scared they ain't gonna invite us back again. My question then is, what value are you sitting up in the room quiet like a nice Negro, afraid to push the interests of our people? I mean, man, we got to get clear on what this fight is all about. Like it was mentioned earlier, like why education is so important. Leroy Bennett wrote this book called The Making of Black America. And one of the things he said in that book is education, it's about this. He or she who controls minds has little or nothing to fear from bodies. So in the final analysis, education is a political question, right? And so the question from a political standpoint is, who's controlling the development of our children's minds?
Yeah. All right.
And so when we talk about these things, as you all look at it in terms of the frame that you're looking at it through, when I say it, I'm talking about the world. When you're looking at the world, you're looking through a world, and your frame is your lived experience, and to the degree that you don't read anything, right? That ought to be the frame. We got some of us who ain't read nothing, and then we got some of us whose lived experience gives us such a limited way to view the world. But in the final analysis, those of us who are going to choose to fight, that is what you have to do, right? You have to combine your lived experience with your study
That's
to
right.
give you a way to view, this is what I'm going to try to do, to engage in what Paulo Freire called the practice of freedom, right? The
Yes.
ability to transform your world. So, so as we have these conversations, what's important for us, I think, is to try to be as clear as we can to our people about what is it that's happening to us and what is it that we can potentially do. And if you bring in ignorance to the table, it is best for the people for you to stay at home. Because if you're not going to read nothing, you're not going to try to learn nothing from what it is that you're experiencing, then you should not be talking to our people. All you're going to do is spread ignorance. And what we need at this moment in time is clarity of purpose,
That's right.
clarity of understanding, and clarity of action, right? We got to at least strive to do those two things. And I'm not just saying this because she's on here, but this is what I love about my sister. If you read her stuff, man, like there ain't no mealy mouth. There's no like, well, maybe this, maybe that. It's like an unapologetic point of view representing the interests of the masses of our people. And the last point I'm going to say on this is that when we look at our problems, it's both a race problem and a class problem.
It is.
Yes.
And so right now, when we look at the violence in Chicago by Black people, we should not be talking about Black on Black crime.
Yes.
We should be talking about the fact that we are put in situations every single day that creates an environment where the violence that you see is happening. But because disproportionately we're the ones who put in that situation, it's happening to Black people. And we need to be very careful about racializing oppression.
That's right.
We need to be very careful about looking at a situation that Black people are in by virtue of our historic oppression. And then when we begin to behave in a way that reflects the reality of what that oppression does to you, we blame it on ourselves. I'm not saying that we have no responsibility in all of this. But what I'm saying is you always got to understand a primary reason for something and a secondary reason for something. And you got to be very careful about making the secondary reason the primary reason. And you got to be very careful about how you talk about what's happening to Black people in an America that was built on our backs through slavery. That's one last thing. This is one last thing. So I'm reading Black
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm reading Black Reconstruction right now by Du Bois. And there's another book called American Dilemma that this dude, Gernot Myrdal, wrote years ago. And he talked about the Negro problem. When, in chapter 6 of Du Bois's book, he outlined what was America's view about how to deal with us. So during the colonial period, it was if we can convert them to Christianity, then maybe they can become a part of mainstream America. Then the next view was they gonna die out because they're weak. That's the rationale behind stopping the slave trade. Because the rationale was we gotta quit bringing them in here. And if we quit bringing them in here, they're gonna die out. When Lincoln realized point 3, that we were not gonna die out, and that the only way that the Union could win the Civil War was to allow Black men to become soldiers. It was at that point in time that they said, hey, they ain't gonna die out. They're gonna end up having to be free. So the only solution is to deport them. It is clear that Lincoln was working hard, man, to get us out of this country because he never believed that Black people and white people could live together. The fourth view was the Confederacy, that we were born to be enslaved by white people. And so the only solution was to have more land that they could enslave people. Those were the 4 points of view about how to deal with the Negro problem. What I would ask you all today is, what do you think the solution is today? Because from their point of view, we still got the Negro problem. Right? I mean, Trump is clear on how to
Yes, he
deal with
is.
us, right? He's clear. Deport them, kill them, do whatever you can. But we got to make sure that in 2044, that white people don't become a minority in America. If people don't understand what this is all about, man, if you floating around there in La La Land talking about voting for Kanye West and all this, man, you're a fool. I mean, given what it is that is happening to our people in this country at this moment right here, and we need those of you who are listening to this, those of you who are on this, we got to have clarity of understanding.
That's right.
Clarity of purpose and clarity of action.
You know what? See, I need a little bitty older Black woman right here on the organ playing. I got the patty shoulders. If y'all didn't catch that heat that Dr. Fuller just dropped, y'all was missing it. Y'all was missing it. And this is why we need to have these conversations, because we're talking about passing the baton. We're talking about keeping the movements going. And we're talking about what we need to do as Black people. And Dr. Fuller just dropped hella points in that conversation. So I want to give y'all, Neo and Jason, my spirit is just shaking. Yeah. And always, like, how do y'all feel about what Dr. Fuller just said? And I hope we got some young people paying attention, or we carrying these messages back to them, because, man, that's heat.
So I think, my soul was just on fire, because a lot of the books that he mentioned, I was like, oh my God, yeah, I remember that. I read that when I was a kid. And I commend my daddy for that, because even as a child, there were so many books that I just wanted to read. I like to, laugh about it and say that's a nerd in me, but it's clearly nothing in being, well educated and reading. And I think that, to a lot of the points that Dr. Fuller made, we have to make, educated statements about this movement and these times. And I think that we all share the same notion. Like, it utterly pisses me off when I see people who I know are educated, who I know have been in the community, and make statements about, well, black on black crime or brown on brown crime is our top priority. We need to fix our communities first before we demand that, Black lives matter. Or even when this precious baby was killed over the 4th of July, weekend, a lot of people went right to social media and immediately started attacking our own people. Well, where is Black Lives Matter? And where are the people that were protesting for women's rights and for, educational rights and all of this? And I'm like, we're still here. We've been here. We were up all evening working with those who are making strategies and plans to help support this family, while you had the luxury of sleeping well in your home, and then go on social media and make these accusatory statements about our own people. So I think that it starts with how we are opening up our minds, how we're educating each other, how we're holding each other accountable, because you can't just go on your own opinion. Well, I feel like the sky should be pink. Well, why should the sky be pink? Like, how is that going to impact us? And so I'm just throwing that example out there, because we have so many people saying that, this is what should be happening, and you don't even know the historical context that goes with why it's happening. So we want to see a how, but we don't know why.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree exactly with what Jason is saying. Like, I think it goes back to what Dr. Fuller said about clarity of understanding. Like, there's a why when a Black person gets shot by a police officer, why there's going to be mass protests and people gathering in the streets. Because we're talking about a system that is supposedly, there to protect them, that we're paying tax dollars into. Like, we're literally paying for our own oppression. But then there's the, why did the brother, shoot this young innocent baby? But there's still a why. But that why goes back to what Dr. Fuller was talking about, as far as, the class issue. And so, like, they literally, like, we literally don't have a way out of this. Like, when we get boxed into a situation like that, it's like economically oppressed and Black at the same time. It's the uphill battle that you gotta climb.
I think we too have to not be fearful of wanting to tear down these systems. And to be honest, even religion, we don't like to have those conversations, but it is a fact that, you know, religion was and still is being used to oppress Black and brown people in this country. If we look at the numbers of youth, we talked about this previously in one of our shows about how so many youth, especially Black youth, are being displaced from home. I don't know how many people watched The Shy, but I thought it was um, a very good point that they're putting out in this season in regards to one of the characters' father, who is a preacher, and how even in the church, whether it's good intention, that we forthright push people away because they've been deemed as different, or we want to be so self-righteous about the young lady that goes out and is a stripper, but we have nothing to say about the young lady who would sit in platforms and lie about our people and keep us in bondage just to get a check to bring back home. And so why are either different if you are quote unquote bringing harm to anyone? And so we don't look at the role of religion in our economic status, in how we do voter suppression, because that's where church and state comes in and the separation of that. So it's a lot of how these systems, kind of tie into each other and intertwine, and they still keep us silenced and oppressed.
I'm a bit of a heathen, y'all, so I can't even touch the church conversation, the religion conversation, none of that stuff. I'm gonna keep it all.
I guess I would be too, right?
Keep it all the way real with y'all, but I do want to transition a little bit to, when we talk about oppressive systems, and we've had this conversation a number of times, we talk about education. And so we got Trump dumbass, we got Betsy's dumbass, we got the miseducation and lack of education of Black kids, so how do all these things, when we talking about keeping the movement going, what do we need to do as education activists and advocates to keep that movement going so that we see liberation for Black kids in education? What do we need to do today?
Well, go ahead, Doctor.
No. Go ahead. I'll follow you.
No, I was just going to say, I think it starts with us all, especially those who are teachers. And I think I saw a couple of comments of people saying that, we're going to be proactively teaching civil rights in our classes. But that job cannot just be given to the ELA teacher or the social studies teacher. There were people that made great strides in math. We saw it in Hidden Figures, but there's a story behind that. There's a book that connects to that. And so I think that teachers in every discipline need to really be in tune with what's happening, not just with social justice, but to break down the barriers in our individual fields. And so I just wanted to throw that out there as a way for those who are in the classroom. Even if you're a Sunday school teacher, if you're teaching voter empowerment, if you're teaching somebody how to drive a car, I need you to have the same mindset of wanting to dismantle systems through the way and the messages that we're teaching to our youth and even to adults.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the difficulty with the conversation that we're having is that we're trying to be as real as possible. And when you're trying to be as real as possible, you have to admit that we're having a multi-dimensional conversation, right? And when you have a multi-dimensional conversation, it's sometimes difficult to bring it all together. And this is what I mean by that. When you asked that question, Tanisha, my first thing was the first thing we got to do is to make sure that our children and our teachers are safe.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's whatever the hell we're talking about out here, whether it's going to be 2 days, 1 day, online, whatever. We got to say, we don't give a damn what Trump says or Betsy or any of them.
Thanks.
The first thing we're going to do, because I had this talk with our principal today, like Judith, our first responsibility is the safety of our children and our staff and all the people who surround our school.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care what the governor says. I don't care what Trump said. I don't care what none of them say. We have to do that first. Judith is saying, Doc, I understand you, but here's the problem that we have. We got new ninth graders coming in, as an example, who've never been a part of our online learning.
Mm-hmm.
During COVID-19, anybody who's honest going to tell you that those of us who were able to do online learning, that a significant percentage of our kids were not participating on a regular basis. Even even where we had schools like ours that had an online platform. Why? Because as a high school, a number of our kids were working 60 to 80 hours a week because all of a sudden they became essential workers. But they weren't just essential workers for this country. They were essential workers for their families.
Yes.
Nobody else in their family was working. And so you sitting up there talking about, oh, y'all need to just get this online. Hell, how you gonna get that online? You working 60, 80 hours a week. When people start talking about, well, we just need to have online learning. Are we going to change the course structure? Are we going to change the way that people get credits? Are we going to change the number of hours that you require? Are we going to change the whole thing? Or are we just going to say we got to have online learning? So what I'm saying is, the first thing we got to do is whatever we tell our kids to do, we need to make sure it is the safest possible avenue for them. The second thing is that we got to be honest about the challenges that we're facing when you begin to talk about online learning, particularly when you're talking about online learning in an oppressed community. You may have 5, 6 kids living in a single house. They ain't got 12 rooms to work in. They ain't got internet connections coming into every room. They just think about all that they don't have, that those of us with resources have, and we're going to pass judgment on them without giving them the proper resources that they need, not just for schooling, but to live.
Come on.
That's right.
Because if you ain't got food, if you don't know how you're going to pay the electric bill, just think of all of the things that those of us with money who are always looking down on the poorest of our people talking about what they need to do. And your ass sitting there with money, with all kinds of resources. Shut up. Until you understand really what poor Black people are dealing with every single day, man, just trying to live. So I'm saying you start with what's right for our people. You then figure out what is going to be the best way for us to try to educate our children. And we have to stand firm for that. And anybody who's standing up saying, well, the first thing we're going to do is if you don't go back to school, and we don't care that going back to school may kill you, we're going to take your funding.
Right.
Who says something that's stupid?
Donald Trump.
But we're going to vote for Kanye West.
That's just as dumb.
That's my point, man. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just saying that when we look at our school, and let me tell you something that I'm gonna, because I'm gonna try to tie this together. When COVID happened, the teachers and the administration of the Milwaukee Public Schools had an agreement that they would all get paid, but nobody would do any work. So for at least 6 to 8 weeks, in a lot of schools, for a lot of poor Black children in the city of Milwaukee, they got zero education. And even those teachers who went against their union and tried to figure out how to educate our kids, they were condemned. This is a truth. I'm not making this up. But even schools like ours that could pivot and go to online learning, we face enormous problems, man. Enormous problems. So when we are now talking about just go back to school, this is insanity. Insanity. And those of us who are Black out here who care about our children have a responsibility to call insanity insanity.
That's right.
And to say to our people, we're not going to do this. We're not going to just put ourselves at risk like that. But we are going to try to figure out what is the best way to advance learning for our children, right? Because we do. If every one of us on this panel had our druthers, we would want our kids to be back in school, right? You want them to be able to go back, and, you know, and all that. But we know you cannot do that at this moment in time.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's irresponsible of us
Yeah.
to not push back on this. But at the
That's
same
right.
time that we're pushing back, we have a responsibility to come up with the best design that we think, not what the CDC thinks,
Yeah.
but what we think about what could work best for our children. Although looking at some of the guidelines, when they're not chicken shit to let us know what they are, when they're not browbeaten by Trump, don't tell the people the truth. Don't put guidelines out there that are going to protect people because it makes me look bad politically.
Right.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? So but you know what? We are people who survived slavery, man. And so I'm of the fundamental belief that we can figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Totally
ain't gonna
agree.
be easy.
Agree.
It's gonna create all kinds of problems. But as a people, man, forget what they say. We need to figure out what we're gonna do
Yep.
for our children and our community.
That's
And
good.
I just want to jump in because I literally just wrote about this last week when I said Trump and Betsy don't care about Black lives because they're trying to send them back to school. And this is what I said when I said over the weekend I pissed some white people off because this white lady emailed me back and she was like, all lives matter. First of all, gone with that shit. Because even before COVID, Black kids were still suffering in the public school system. And they go suffer even
Right.
more now. And so, yeah, we want our kids to go back to school. Like it makes sense, but they cannot go back to school in the conditions that were and the conditions
Right.
that will be. So I definitely
Right.
agree. And this is a time for us as a community to start talking about those alternatives already, because again, we had a shitty system before. But what can we do with the local nonprofit? What can we do with the
That's
local
right.
church? How can we rebuild our own freedom schools? How can we create resources and come up with all the essentials that we need to, again, keep our kids safe? Because realistically, Jason, you talked last week about a school in Atlanta that had mold and they couldn't even clean their schools. We got teachers that got to buy their own school supplies throughout the year. We
That's
can't
right.
trust these schools to have gloves and Lysol and hand sanitizer and keep these kids apart for hours.
That's
So
right.
come on now, y'all. So it's like, yeah, I hear the conversations about kids need to go back to school, but do y'all really trust this country to keep our kids safe, especially our Black kids? Hell no, they don't even have
Right.
nurses in their schools. So I just had to go in on that because it's that all lives matter and send the kids back to school. It's not that goddamn simple. It's not
Not
that.
at all. And Tanisha, you made a point. One of the first things that happened in the midst of COVID-19, from the president on down to the governors, the very first thing that they did was cut the education budget. They pushed for school board leaders to furlough teachers. We can't reopen schools and we're not reimagining how education should go. I wasn't on the panel, but I sat in two different, webinars or lives or whatever we're calling them these days, where they feature school board members. And I had one parent that thought that my comment was just like the best thing she had ever heard. And I said, well, here's the reality in Metro Atlanta. Tennis courts have been closed down, basketball courts have been closed down, football fields have been closed down. Instead of us putting these children and teachers back in schools that do have mold, that have ceilings that are still leaking, that have lead in the water, because it's not happening just in Flint, it's happening in a lot of lower income communities across America.
Mhm.
Why aren't we doing class outside of the box? If we go back through our history and we look, or if we do have those family photos, I have a family photo from my great great grandmother when they were doing the grammar schools in West Virginia, and they were outside. Like, why are we not on the football fields and spacing people out? And those kids who have asthma or need smaller spaces, let them be in rooms that have been clean. Why are we not reimagining what education can look like and making partnerships? We're not doing it because people are not willing to do that. They're not educated on how we can change the system. School systems can make partnerships with the city and the county just like they've been doing. They're not doing it because they don't want to do it. This is about dollars and cents and about pushing the agenda that, well, if these kids do get sick, it really won't be our fault, because then the CDC, he mentioned that. He was like, they're going to say it, but we need to push back on it. And I think the reality is enough people are not pushing back. They're relying on someone else to push back for them. Now, everybody needs to be pushing back, because these are our sisters, our brothers, our children, our godchildren, our grandchildren that are being impacted by this. And most importantly, our loved ones who are going in and out of these schools, to make sure that our children are safe and well taught. So I just wanted to put that out there as well.
Yeah, I mean, Jason, I think that's crucial, man. And we need to remember who are the people who are going to be driving the buses.
Right.
Who are going to be people serving the meals? Who are going to be the people cleaning up the building? So it isn't just our children, but it's also our families, man. And I understand the difficult position that our families are in, man. They're trying to survive.
That's right.
Before this pandemic hit, they didn't have nothing. Now they got less than they had. And so this idea of our kids going back to school is not just tied to education. It's tied to life. It's tied to what are we going to do in order to survive. And we got to appreciate that, right? As we try to think through this. But again, how does it work that the economy bounced back, but the price is your death? You know, so when Chris Christie came on TV talking about, if we open up the economy, we know that there's going to be a certain amount of people who are going to have to die. He wasn't talking about his damn family.
Right.
He wasn't thinking this is going to be my grandmother or no. He was talking about our grandmothers, because he don't care about us, man.
But then they say all lives matter.
And then there's 135,000 people who have died in this country from this virus, man. 5 times as many Black people have died, in a disproportionate number to our number in the population.
Those are votes.
Look, man, this is serious, man. And I just want to go back to this point and not lose it. It is critical when any Black person dies from a pandemic or from violence, either that happens within our community or by the police. But here's the thing we got to understand. It's one thing when we're in the conditions that we're in and we're killed in part because of those conditions and other things that we're all aware of. But when the state kills you, it's a different situation.
Right.
And we got to keep coming back to that. When y'all start talking to me about, but what about this and what about that? I am saying that we have an organization where the state has authority and power that none of us have. And that authority and power stands behind them putting a knee on George Floyd's neck. And the reason why I feel so deeply about this is on July 9th, 1981, a young Black man named Ernest Lacy was on his way to the store in Milwaukee. He never made it because he ran into the tactical squad of the police department, who arrested him for something he did not do, and they killed him by putting their knee on his neck, in the same way that George Floyd was killed 39 years later. So what I'm saying, man, is when we start talking about institutional change and inflection points and all of this, I'm all for that. But in order for us to really get into what does that mean, we have to understand the history of this stuff. So, for example, I made a comparison between the teachers union and the police union. People got all mad. Here's the reason why I made the comparison. When you say, I got problems with the Milwaukee public school system or the Chicago public school system, Atlanta public school system, people say you're against public education. No, I'm against the delivery system that y'all set up. I'm all for public education, but the delivery system that y'all set up is wrong. When we complain about the police killing us, they say, oh, you're against public safety. No, I'm for public safety, but I'm against the way that y'all have organized.
Yes.
To quote, bring about safety, because clearly we ain't safe.
Right.
So what I'm saying to people is we can't fall for the okie doke. That when you raise serious questions about the way certain things are delivered to us, it doesn't mean that we're not for public education. We're not for public health. We're not for public safety. We're for all of that. But what
Yes.
we're clear about is the way y'all done organized it, it does not work for large numbers of us. And only a fool would continue to say, we need to, what did Einstein say? Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Yes.
That's right.
And it is insanity not to demand radical change in the structures that are set up to, quote, serve us.
Shit.
That was great.
Did y'all hear? If y'all did not catch that, Dr. Fuller said it is insane not to demand change in these systems. Radical change. Like, I'm stuck again because, and it's like we can sit here and listen to Dr. Fuller all day because he preaches, but at the same time, you know, he preaches and we have to internalize these words, these messages, and put them into action.
That's right. Action is key.
We have to, and so I want to. We got a couple of minutes left, and I want to kind of, you know, close out with y'all thoughts around this conversation that we've been having, and specifically the tail end of the conversation around reopening schools, because I think this is an opportunity that we can take advantage of. We're talking about defunding police, and we're talking about, you know, social justice, social rights around police brutality and things like that. But that education conversation is missing. We're just talking about reopening schools. But how can we use this conversation in this moment to organize Black people around pushing back so that we can get what we need in reopening schools? Or if we don't, we're not going to hell back. What can we do? What conversations do we need to have? Who do we need to target?
I definitely think we need to target youth because a lot of them are not in these conversations. You know, I mentioned that on a panel that I participated on a couple of weeks back. And I'm also writing about that. You know, we're missing the voices of our youth leaders. Now, we call them for assembly programs, but we don't have any leaders that are calling their youth to say, hey, you know, what are your classmates saying? What are some of the things that you're going through? They're exempt from the conversation. We also have to empower parents. And I've even talked to Tanisha about this, you know, offline. We definitely have to empower and protect teachers, because one of the things that has just done so well in my soul is seeing so many of my colleagues standing with those of us who have been activists on the front line and saying enough is enough. Like, you know, I've seen this happening in schools. I'm seeing what's happening behind the table, and we need to make sure that our children are safe. And so, you know, it goes back to the initial mindset of why the PTA was formed, for parents, teachers, and students. And I think those are our three constituents that we have to empower in this call for change, because those are going to be the stakeholders that are holding school board leaders and also state leaders. It starts with the state governors and state superintendents that have willingly cut budgets, but they don't want to defund the police. They don't want to reroute funding to go to places that are going to make sure our children are safe. Parks and recreations are open. Our nursing homes are properly equipped, and that our seniors are protected. I was devastated by that in Atlanta. So definitely parents, students, teachers.
Neil, what you got?
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, I'm just kind of stuck on something that Dr. Fuller had said earlier about during, you know, at mid-COVID, the kids are working 40, 50 hours a week because, you know, the parents have been furloughed, or some of the parents have just been flat out laid off. And that took me all the way back to my grandfather, who left Jim Crow, Louisiana with a third grade education. And the reason why he has a third grade education is because he had to leave to go and support his family. And it's like, damn, like we're 3 generations later, 4 generations later, dealing with the same damn thing again. It bothers my mind. And so that's what I'm wrestling with right now. I'm like, what wrench do we need to put into the gears of this system to just halt it, to say, look, we're going to be a part of it, or y'all need to carve out, you know, a space for us or something. Like, something has to happen, because clearly this is not working out. We are dying. I'm terrified with the idea of our kids going back to school. We had a lady die earlier, our secretary, she died earlier this year, or last year she died, late last year she died. She had diabetes, and it caught up with her. My mother, she has pulmonary sarcoidosis, stage 4. She's not the only person in our community with, underlying health conditions. So I'm just like, so these kids, they catch COVID, they go home. We already know that Black and Latinx folks are disproportionately affected.
Right.
Yes.
Sending the kids back to school is just so irresponsible. But who will pay for it? We already know it's going to be us. So what are we going to do about it? I think that we may just have to return to what we returned to a few weeks ago and be extremely disruptive and say, hell no, we won't go. We're not sending our kids to school. But at the same time, it's a complex issue. You got parents that, they may not necessarily have somebody to take care of their kids. So we're in a tight spot.
Yes.
And I don't have any answers.
Yeah.
Who did you say had sarcoid?
Oh, my mother.
Yeah, well, I have sarcoid. And, I've been lucky that it's in remission, but Bernie Mac died from sarcoid. Mm-hmm. And sarcoidosis is a disease that a lot of our people have that folks don't know anything about. Mm-hmm. And whenever you enter into a situation like this COVID-19 and you got these underlying conditions, you're at even greater risk, and you're particularly at greater risk when you never had decent health care in the first place. You know what I'm saying? This is how all of this stuff sort of dovetails, right? Is that we already have all of these issues that have to do with the conditions under which we've been forced to live. And I want to say something very clearly. Whenever anybody says to me that the reason why Black people are poor is because we ain't work hard, you slandering my mother and my grandmother. Yeah. Right. They work hard every single day of their lives, man. So don't run that y'all ain't willing to work hard stuff on me. You know what I mean? And we got Negroes who no. That is not why we're in this situation. We're in this situation because we have been systematically oppressed from the day that we were snatched from Africa and brought over here. Yeah. And at every stage of the development of American history, Black people have been suppressed, oppressed, and used for the benefit of this larger nation and have never been repaid for the sacrifices that we have made. So when people start talking to me about all this, y'all don't work hard, this, that, and the other thing, anybody who nods their head to that lie, you're a disgrace to the race because you don't understand like the history of what we have gone through in this country, right? And we're at another moment right now. And all of us on this panel right now, and those of us who are listening, history is going to define us by what we do or don't do at this particular moment in time, right? Because history is going to be written by a lot of these little kids that's out there now, and they're going to be asking serious questions about what did y'all do in 2020 when there was a pandemic, when the police was killing Black people, when Donald Trump was the president. What did y'all do? I voted for Kanye West. That, and so is that the message we're gonna leave? I think not. Yeah. So I would suggest that number one, we need to be organizing ourselves at a political level. And I'm being very clear. I'm voting for Joe Biden. Ain't got a damn thing to do with my belief in Joe Biden. I don't think that Joe Biden is good for the self-determination of Black people on the education front because he done loaded up his education task force with all those people who are going to protect the status quo. When Black people need options, we need charters, we need privacy, we need any Black person who believes in the one best system doesn't understand history. It has never been in the interest of Black people to have only one way to do anything in America. So from on the real side, we need to organize ourselves politically. to defeat Donald Trump, to defeat as many people who connected to Donald Trump as possible. But at the same time, we need to be organizing to fight them on the other side. You see what I'm saying? It's a twofold strategy. It's
Yes.
get rid of Trump
Both sides.
and then organize to fight y'all, because y'all ain't for us either.
Yeah.
It's like, but we can do both of those things, in my opinion. The
Yeah.
second thing I think we need to do is on the education side, we need to continue to push hard for options for our families, because we cannot afford to let them to be that the only way for them to get an education is through this one best system that has never worked for us. Number three, I think that those of us who care about each other need to be supporting each other at this moment in time. I mean, I really believe that. I mean, I believe that it's a good thing, man, to send a text to somebody, just, hey, like, how you doing? I mean, you know what I mean? We just, because we got so many of our people right now, man, who beaten down, you know, who just been beaten down, man. And just for somebody to reach out and just say, hey, you know, brother, hey, sister, you know, how you doing? Is there anything I can do, right? A little thing like that, I would argue, at this moment in history, would go a long way and is important. But the last thing I would say is and I go back to Derek Bell's book about fighting, even though we don't see a clear pathway to victory. To just fold up our tent is not acceptable. Because in this book, Derek Bell was talking about this elderly Black woman. I think it was in Macomb, Mississippi, or somewhere. It was 1964. And Derek Bell was saying to her, like, look, saying, like, why y'all get up every day and fight? The white people in control of the money. They got the guns. They're in control of the government. They're in control of everything. She said, you know what? She said, I'm old and I can't speak for everybody, but God put me on this earth to harass white people. So what I'm saying is, if you can't do nothing but harass these damn people, then you got a responsibility to do first class harassment at the deepest level.
That's good.
That is
Hey, y'all, that's
awesome.
That look, Dr. Fuller slapped us with the Spirit, just slapped us with the Holy Ghost, y'all. And he laid out, he told y'all what we needed to do. Now the question is, what are you gonna do?
That's good.
Our kids are watching and they need us. So with that, y'all, we are beyond our time. I wish we can keep this conversation going, but it will continue at some point in the future. But catch us every Monday on Citizen Ed's page, 1 p Central, 2 p Eastern, talking that real shit. Me, Tanisha Peoples, my brothers Nehemiah Frank and Jason Allen. And we want to shout out, like, huge shout out to one of the most iconic leaders of our lifetime, Dr. Howard Fuller. Is always a pleasure, always a pleasure. Like, you feed us so much and we appreciate you. So thank you for coming on today and talking to us and talking to everybody that's, you know, watching our show. We got to have you back, like, for real.
Yes.
And thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It was powerful, dog. It was powerful, man. I'm like, yeah, okay, now what we doing next? Because it's time to get boots on the ground and let's get to work so we can dismantle this entanglement. I wanted to throw that word out there so I could get
I mean, honestly, this conversation was so powerful. I cannot wait to go back and watch it, just to listen to everything that comes out of your mouth. Thank you so much for coming in. And
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, y'all. We out of here talking that real shit next week. Catch up with us.
All right.